Hi, and welcome to The Paradox of Change, a podcast dedicated to mental health and well-being, founded by practitioners and the sole purpose of inspiring people to talk. Today, we're joined by Geri Carey as she shares her journey and interesting switch from business and leadership into becoming a successful therapist, coach, author, and academic researcher in authenticity. Let's get talking, shall we? Yeah, it's the way of
Yeah,
life now, isn't it? You know, webinars and the pandemic and everything else. It's been an interesting kind of background leading to this like normality that even we're doing now. So
oh yeah, there's so much in what you've just said, isn't there? Like, yeah, absolutely. And I'm still getting used to that connection online because I really see the value when I meet my clients face to face, especially when I do my work on a Monday in the drug and alcohol charity. I can't imagine doing that online, but then I have some great experiences online with other clients. It's
I
bizarre.
was going to say something similar actually. I've had a few clients that have been recommended to me, and over the course of time, we do Google Meets and Skypes and
Yeah,
I remember when I was in training, and some of the tutors were talking about it'll never go online. You shouldn't. It'll always
yeah.
needs to be face to face. And Jesus Christ, how things have changed in relatively a short space of time. And you must notice the same thing.
Definitely, I do. And, my supervisor was telling me about this. I think it was 10 years ago, did some sort of assignment or whatever she did on, I think her research was on just that thing. And they said it was ludicrous. You couldn't do this online. So she's had a real interesting time kind of pulling all that out with a little bit of, oh, yeah, well, absolutely, it happened. So she
Yeah,
saw,
yeah. And there's a humbling experience with this because certainly some of the clients that I've worked with, and I've got one that springs to mind. We met at a Teal Swan event, and I've actually interviewed him about 6 months ago about
yeah,
his experience. The location, there was no way that we could have met face to face. So it became a blessing. So although
yeah.
we were using Skype, not ideal, it just dissolved into immaterial when the
Mm.
relationship had been built. Not that face to face doesn't have any value. I recognize the value. It is more important, but good learning experience for me more than anything else.
Absolutely, and it can still be done, like you say. It's that relationship. It's that it is that. So I think as long as what I find is the usual kind of contracting around, like you did with me, then making sure there's not going to be any disturbances, and yeah, just that. I think it can work really nice, and like you say, that you can reach so many other different people. Like world's your oyster.
I've actually got a few questions planned, but I'm already feeling I need to go off track. And I was, and I, no, I was thinking about kind of the whole online thing. You must be aware of the social media hints at AI counseling and what that's
Oh
going to
yeah.
bring to the experience of not just individuals but humanity. We're interacting with, and it's not pre-programmed. AI is machine learning. So, what's your thought about that?
Um, that's a really good question. My thoughts are that I think if somebody wouldn't traditionally, God, I'm going to go off piece now, right? So I think that um, therapy, as we've discussed, can have an interesting reputation. So if someone is accessing therapy in a different way, that means they're getting some sort of help. Okay, so if they're at crisis point, and that is intelligent enough to signpost them to the right places, because they wouldn't think to pick up the phone to a person, then I think that could be helpful in that situation. Um, but there is
Oh,
not
that's a good
an
point.
absolute no replacement, in my view. I go all Rogers now on that kind of relational depth that's human to human. It's energy, it's kind of, you know, eyeball to eyeball, whites of the eyes, love metaphor. Um, that kind of relational depth. That's it, really. I think it's down to what a person's view of therapy is. And I think in this moving world, is it convenient for people to have this sort of therapist in their pocket? You know, people
It does
just want
pose
those
some,
sort of solutions, quick fix solutions, don't they?
yeah, it does throw up some ethical questions, and certainly that I
Oh,
I
yeah.
grapple with. Do I run with it myself and stay at the forefront of it, and encourage change. You think about the work that we do with our clients. We are trying to prevent the stuckness. I guess it's that challenge that we all face, but AI is here. Therapy is needed. I think mental health is a state now that most young people today, it's easy just to talk about online to the masses and get some form of validation, but it's not necessarily healthy. That's the problem that I have with it.
Yeah, the ethical thing is huge. Definitely know from having a teenager that, AI is interesting. Their attention, they want the sort of quick fixes. So I think, again, it's just the unknown, isn't it? I think it might be, I'm just thinking if it's used as a bit of a directory, so where would I go for help with, then perhaps that's useful. But yeah, in terms of that bespoke, unique, personalized, tailored, connection, I don't think that that's possible without knowing that person, without seeing that person. So they're going to be getting cookie cutter solutions kind of things. Or it might say, can you give me some top tips to deal with stress? But that kind of stuff's available on the internet as well, isn't it? So that's another box kind of worms. But yeah.
Well, I think we need a fortnightly session. So I was doing some professional stalking on your LinkedIn. You may have noticed you've got a strong business and leadership background. What on earth made you choose to be a therapist?
I think there's so many different things to this. So and it's been so therapeutic the last few years, because I've got more insight going back now than I did at the time. So again, it's at the time I just felt I couldn't really cope anymore. So I got to the pinnacle, I would say, at that point of my career. I was doing really well, senior leadership role at Santander, responsible for a team of people. But I guess what happened to me, in short, was a big trauma and lots of different things that made me question myself and my ability. And I found it harder and harder to go in work, and in meetings I would feel embarrassed. I was suffering from psoriasis, just kind of crept up. And I had a baby as well late on. She there's a big age gap between our children. We've been struggling with fertility, and I was pregnant at 39. And it was a mixture of the sort of confidence, and it just all came to a head at the end of my pregnancy, I would say. And yeah, just decided that it might be time to, for a bit of a change. So the logistics, I don't think would have worked traveling the length and breadth of the country. So just, and a couple of losses just made me completely crack open, I call it.
Reevaluate,
yeah, but not really want any connection to the identity I was. So I was completely lost. I knew I wanted something else, but I knew I didn't want to go back to what I was, but I didn't know how to get to where I wanted to be.
And I think that's somewhat of a key takeaway when we think about the therapeutic process. Sometimes we need to allow ourselves to either hit rock bottom or hit a brick wall that that you can't continue in that direction any further. So there is some bravery in going, oh, I'm going to make a big change. But sometimes it's more natural, where you just can't continue in that direction. Something's got to change. And so when I think about your background and leadership and Santander, and what made you choose therapy, and why classically trained?
Because again, it's that looking back. I think at 18, I remember being absolutely bowled over by human flourishing, all the textbook trainings that we used to do in recruitment, human psychology. I've always loved that. I think I've always been empathic, compassionate. Again, it's the hindsight. But I think for me, when I was cracked open, it's the typical story. I went to see a therapist, and working in HR, I feel like I was as close to doing a therapeutic role as I could have gotten to. I didn't really think it was another option, because that was the career that had been, I write about this, but chosen for me. That was how I was propelled into life. that was my identity. So maybe that was a part of me. Here we go. We've got to get all person centered. That was me nudging towards those parts. And I made the job work in a therapeutic way as much as I could. So when I saw my therapist, she kind of said, after all the chaos at the start, you know, what is it, you know, and she saw something in me. I think it's that, and that, again, that relational depth, that, you know, and then with that curiosity, I started leaning into those little hunches, and I ended up thinking about what to do, and I just didn't know that person centered was even a thing, and so
Yeah.
I
Well,
yeah
there's so many modalities, aren't there? So
yeah
it when you don't know therapy, excuse the expression here, but how the hell do you figure out which one might
unbelievable.
be suited to you?
And honestly, and on top of that, then you say, well, what about CBT? What about your DBT? What about, and people are just like that. And exactly. So I didn't know. But I ended up, from whatever happened, the universe or whatnot, I ended up having a coffee at Keele University. And you know
Right.
what? I thought, I like it here. I'm home. And
Oh,
despite
you went with
thinking,
the feeling.
went with the feeling, and you know, I left home very early. I started to work very early. I'm not had an academic background, so then that whole, what's this, and that was it for me.
This the hairs have just come. I don't know if the camera can see, but the
Oh
hairs have just come up on my arm. Oh wow. Right. Okay. I came out of school with no exam results. That just being
oh
absolutely transparent. And dyslexic, so can't string a sentence together, but with all
okay.
the modern technology, I can fight with the best of them, and there's no restrictions at all. So I've got no problems with challenging
Yeah.
academia, but it's not my
Mhm.
forte. It's not my strength. My emotional connection and value and recognizing feeling and behaviors is the thing that's more
Yes.
ingrained in a part of me, so to speak.
All
But
the yeses. I've got
like
goosebumps now.
like you, I went to a local college. So 36, I started my life again, literally racing
Oh
motorbikes, an old fashioned background, very male orientated.
yeah.
And the thought of doing the things that I used to do, I used to wake up with anxiety. I used to wake up with dread. I'll never forget that feeling. And I knew that there was a shift in the making until I lost everything. And in your with your transparency in mind, I'm sort of trying to do the same thing. But essentially, once I'd lost everything, this is back in 2008, 2009, there was the
Yeah.
opportunity to rebuild, and it was just a blessing, an absolute blessing. Life
Oh
restarted. I went to college, did a bit of photography, did a bit of, well, as you can see, look and feel is important to me, but did a photography course,
yeah.
a Photoshop course, and then I thought, well, I feel connected to people, and there's a level 2 course in counselling skills. So I did that, and immediately, like you, when you said you sat down at the college and thought, this is a bit of me. Same college, different feeling with different courses. Did this level 2, and immediately felt like this feels like me. I can't put my finger on it. Didn't understand the modalities, but essentially it became the springboard to
Wow.
today, now, everything that we
Yeah.
do.
Oh wow. And question for you.
Yeah,
My
go for it.
podcast. No,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
please,
And
you take the
so
driving seat. I'm okay with that.
no, you know what I'm thinking in my rawness. So two things. If for me, and I wondered if it was the same for you, it was almost like my body went, right, you're open now, have a bit of this, have a bit of that, have a bit of the other, and everything kind of came to me. So that was my first point. Second one was, I think I'd been operating as cracked open for about 10 years and not seen it, just fixing as I went, fixing as I went.
I'm
And
not sure I understand that.
thirdly, I think,
So you
yeah,
felt like you've been cracked open.
yeah, talk about the defining moment of being cracked open as if it's the moment, it's the breakdown before the breakthrough. But I was then thinking, you know what? There is the big moment, but I've been operating as cracked open for 10 years, just fixing as I went. So I'll try this. I'll try yoga. I'll try just trying to put the sticking
Oh, I
plasters on. In, I
see.
think in those little, yeah.
Yeah, that and actually that resonates. You know, when I think of being a young man, men don't talk about mental health. They have opportunities to be vulnerable, but then it's quickly brushed over in a true rugby tackle way. We punch each other on the shoulders and go, oh, it'll be all right, and all those kind of things. And certainly in the background that I was in. And yes, to your point, there became a point where there was moments of authenticity, but it was quickly brushed under the carpet, or it didn't work. So I'll go training. I'll go and ride a motorbike. I'll go to the gym.
Yeah.
I'll take up this. I'll
Yes.
take up that. And of course, they just become sticking plasters over the course of time.
That's it. And I think, yeah, that's exactly it, isn't it? So that I think that's the main thing. That the other thing as well was that it was only when, in that kind of moment of letting go and having nothing, detaching from certain relationships for me, certain toxic relationships, and recognizing and having the bravery to go solo. It was then I was able
and that's
to
no mean
identify.
feat. That's not something to be brushed over. That's a huge thing.
Massive.
Yeah.
Um,
And do
yeah,
you
that's
think
a
also your own identity comes into that? So there is a part of the older version of you that you believed that you were, that you held on to so tightly, yet it was the source of uncomfort or discomfort and anxiety that at some point you go, shit, that's not actually me. This is the reason why I feel this way.
yeah. And I'm clear now on those different parts that that person wouldn't have let me even, and I say again, dare to dream at
Oh, wow.
university. It wouldn't have even been a thought that I could have gone to a place like that, or that people would listen to me. And I think we'd taken away, I'm going to be really straight with you now. It was the people, actually. It was we'd taken away and putting myself in an environment. I literally cocooned myself and thought about what I wanted and what I needed. And
You
that was
immersed
how
yourself in this,
I was
didn't you?
able to, yeah, I did. Yeah.
You think about the
Yeah.
audience that are going to be listening and watching. Out of the modalities that you know about, how would you explain classically trained to somebody?
It's another good question.
Sorry.
It's all right. It's about, I always have two things going on because it can sound so much more simple. And I'm like you, I have feelings. So classically trained for me, person-centered is about relationship. It's about building trust, about me sitting alongside the client,
Hmm.
not getting in the client's way and sitting with them. Love the metaphor of being on a train, sit as passengers, looking out the window, seeing different things, but just sitting alongside, not directing the client, which
Well, that's
often
the
can
thing, isn't it?
feel.
Classically trained is a non-directive therapy, and I often, even with family and friends, just explaining that is a big concept because they can't quite get the give get value of that opportunity to work with somebody.
No, and I integrate some positive psychology coaching, which is super interesting. It's a very interesting concept, but the initial sessions and those, trying to explain that, it is, you're holding the mirror up for the client to see themselves. You're listening, and with that, with the awareness, with you're helping them. You're kind of putting that helping them to put their own safe foundations in place. I think it's about explaining to the client, well, I could give you 5 top tips to do this, but they're only my view. And actually, what is it about you? So for me, it then, again, here we go, another one springboard, but it becomes about that self-worth. It becomes about the awareness of, do they know who they are?
Yeah,
And it's providing the space in the middle between who they are and who they want to be and what's getting in the way. And that's only them that can find
yeah.
that.
I think that resonates with me because I think I have clients that may, just as an example, may come to me and say,
Mm.
not sure, I need counselling, or they might say, I don't know how this is going to help. And then when I explain my modality, because I'm only classically trained, and I've got questions about your other modalities and qualification, because I'm fascinated, and I think this segues nicely into that. But essentially, the classically trained, being non-directive, we don't tell the clients what to do. It's a big concept. And then when I talk to family, friends, and even other clients and say, I'm also never going to ask you a question, and that concept is lost so often. How
Yeah.
do you work without asking a question? Well, you summed it up lovely. We have a relationship, and it's an accepting relationship. It's an empathic relationship. It's congruent relationship. I'm okay not being okay. And then we can uncover things. The beauty, I think, for me, is seeing someone evolve into this new version of them, not recognizing how they got there. And it's, the reason for the name of the show, Paradox of Change, Carl Rogers, when we accept ourselves as we are, the
Love
curious
it.
paradox is that we then change. So this all about that acceptance is kind of inspired exactly, between Fee and Lottie and myself in this show. This is what started it. It was that reference in one of my pieces of coursework that I just kept on coming back to. Just I didn't realize how powerful it was. Exactly to your point, when you just hold the mirror up, don't underestimate the
Yeah.
value of that mirror.
That's it. Just all the yeses to that. And I always, well, with friends, you see people just having that space to unpack is magical, because you watch it. We see it every day. If only we stop and listen, so everybody can be a little bit person centered. That's one of my passion
Do you
projects. But I think we can all be a little bit more person centered. And
so I'm going to say, do you think person centered has changed you enough that it's infiltrated how you interact with family and your children?
100%,
And how do you
it's
think that's
changed my life.
benefited
Yeah.
benefited the family?
Well, initially when I did my,
That was
initially
telling.
when I did So initially, when I did my research project, which was on authenticity about myself, so I had 6 months of going off walking in the woods and collecting artifacts and making sense of them. I think they all thought I'd absolutely lost the plot. And then, through self-searching and, I mean, my husband, he absolutely is amazing. But I think that it's my self-awareness. So how's it benefited them? I'm more forgiving to myself, and I can also, I can see them, and I hold back, and I can clock my own crap,
Yeah.
and I just think, and it's just made me, I think you just appreciate just how unique and each person is. Yeah, that sounds really fluffy.
No, I don't think it does, because I just think about, I've got two little boys. Well, I've got three boys in total, but two of them, predominantly live with me. And
Mm,
to provide an environment where I know that their growth is in my acceptance of them and leading the way, from a male perspective, a masculine perspective. I think there's some value in helping them uncover who they are, challenge them. But I think the person-centered bit, being okay with any of their emotions, and I say this to my kids often: all feelings are acceptable, all behaviours are not. That comment
yeah.
is something that we kind of live our lives by. So I think I wouldn't be as
Oh,
capable, and
mm,
I wouldn't be as I hope a good daddy, without
mm.
recognizing that it's my own self-awareness which then will hopefully, fingers crossed, infiltrate my boys.
Oh, totally. Oh, yeah, that's lovely. That's so nice. And yeah, we're really similar. And I think it's made parenting a lot easier, because
Oh,
their home, yeah,
100%.
their home here is where they can be themselves. I'm really conscious of the school system, and that having to do the best that, I'm not going to get into that whole thing, but that I get, they just can't always be themselves in school, in relationships. So for me, it starts with the environment, actually. And it's that whole kind of Brené Brown parent manifesto that brings tears to my eyes. She wrote a beautiful thing, and it's about, you are accepted here in this house, but what person-centered allows. I'm going to give you a real life example. It happened this morning with my son, but I think he said something and I had a bit of a reaction to him sharing something with a friend. And not a bad one, but I was able to then go back and say, hey, you know what? Actually, that was me just having a bit of a reaction to just thinking about you. And actually, you know, I can appreciate, and we had the conversation, and it can just be done quite organically, but I'm more able to make mistakes and be forgiving for myself, because I do, you know, it's self-compassion as well, but it's the environment, it's him. We've got that trust between us, we've got that relationship. So our home is where the foundations are. They can be themselves, and yeah, giving them that safe place to gravitate back to. I'm almost trying to replicate what I've built inside of myself. I think you
Oh,
need
that's
that.
lovely.
Yeah. I found that during my research. I called it my owl, because when I was researching and when I was writing, I noticed that I would finish sentences with, oh, it's okay, you've done this, and try that. And I went back years, and it was there all the time. And I never seen this real positive force that just sat inside of me that I didn't realize was there, almost like a mother.
Yeah, it's ingrained. It's always been there.
It's always been there.
So I know that it sounds like we both have the client-centered, person-centered coursing through our veins. We can't always be that, but I think it holds us accountable for our
Yeah.
feelings, so we're not projecting onto the people around
Yeah.
us. We say, this is my shit, I know this, and then you can be responsible and accountable for however you behave thereafter.
Yeah.
Now, so when we talk about client-centered, here's the however, and this is the bit that I need your education here. What is a therapeutic coach, and how do, do you segregate that from client-centered, or is that amalgamated? And if so, how the hell have you done it?
Just trying to think the best way. So I think for me, just to take you back a step, I think because of my background, so I have always I've coached for years, you know, absolutely years and years and years and years. So it was something, I think, that was just there. I think with obviously the classically trained, you learn to leave all that at the door. So it kind of
Yeah.
kept coming back to, and my last assignment was a podcast on and I started to look into it. So I've got some really interesting parts actually from where Rogers calls, actually he says he uses the term coach interchangeably at the very end of his work. So I think he was getting there. Definitely the later part of his work was there.
Okay, we need a part 2 to this
Yeah.
podcast.
We definitely, there's loads of interesting stuff on this. So it gave me a lot of, oh yes, I just felt like I had a bit of a green light, if that makes sense.
Do you think that almost gave you an opportunity, knowing that Rogers said about, if he's talking about the elements of coaching at the end, doesn't that kind of give you a bit of a green light to go, I'm not quite so constrained?
Yeah, it does. I feel like it's the whole like baton, you know, and it was very close, wasn't it, to Maslow? It's just that obviously, but his theory of what would you call it, directionality, you know, that's it. That's what I hold on to. That is that, you know, we're all got the tendency to push forward, and I think sometimes coaching, that's where it kind of fits in.
So how does therapeutic coaching work?
And so I guess it's not widely recognized because we're still looking at it as a kind of role. Interestingly enough, I spoke to, and I am looking to get more involved with the BACP on this. I contacted them to ask them the question, because I've had lots of people reach out to me who, and I had a really good chat with a guy last week who'd been, who is, a therapist, and he just, I think he feels he just wants to add a little bit more, or he's getting a little bit, I'm going to just say it, bored, really. I think he's 30, 40 years into practice, and he's like, oh, okay, so is there anything, is there anything else? So the thought of being able to offer a little bit of, coaching in a non-directive way was really appealing to him. And actually, it was appealing to a lot of people, because I then did a webinar. I just felt a hunch and I thought, oh, sod it, I'll do it. And 20 people arrived and they were like, so yeah, what's important to note is that it isn't, the title therapeutic coach to me is where you can use both approaches interchangeably. But I guess what's really, really sensitive, and that's okay, is that coaches, we don't want to be giving the green light, so to speak. We don't want that in terms of people providing therapy solutions. And I know that therapists, and this is just, from my communications, are very hesitant, because we've worked hard for this, and we don't want coaches taking our jobs. And it's seen as coaches seem to be a bit more, I don't know, maverick. I'm just saying, this is my whole view. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but so it's a very interesting concept. But my best friend, who's an ex-client 15 years ago, is a coach, a transformational coach. So and she's so person-centered. I'm always saying to her, you're definitely going to be, and it's cracked her. So in short, at the moment, from just looking at it from the BACP point, it's work in progress in terms of how we link those practices together. It's recognised that I think there is an interest for people to incorporate coaching in their practice, and people are doing it. Yeah. So I think my view is like this. I think people are doing it anyway, so let's get together. Let's have a conversation about it.
Don't inhibit growth, hey?
Don't inhibit growth. Let's use the framework because that's what we can do. We can use the framework, and we can use the competencies from, the most recognised bodies in the coaching industry. But let's face it, it's not regulated. There's no scopes and things, but here's where it is. So it's about, I guess for me, is I tend to start off with the person-centered therapy if it's needed. And then, there's lots and lots of research around when you're sitting with a client, and this is what I found, and that you've got a bit of information or something that will help them. To keep that to yourself is sometimes, it's that grapple, I think. And I think as therapists,
that was kind of the whole purpose of supervision, isn't it? When you take those as a classically trained, we are not telling the clients what to do. We are not asking them questions. We're not directing them down a path that we believe, their authenticity, them figuring out what they should be doing. And I always use this analogy, and I think it's important. If the client thinks, I figured this out, the psychological shift is huge. So to your point, if you're holding on to something, and if you've built the relationship up enough, and that's a really important word, enough, there must come a point where you think there's a gem here, because I trust the relationship, and I'm allowed to be, in my authenticity, I'm allowed to be wrong as well. So I can deliver this and say, I have a hunch, I got a feeling. Are we? You're nodding.
100%. So, and I always say, am I acting with integrity? And a million, that's it. It's always with the client's best interest at heart. But understanding and having that therapeutic, training that allows us to consider those power dynamics, consider what am I getting out of it, what's going on here, the wider picture, and offering solutions to encourage the client autonomy. So, hey, there's a few things here I'm feeling that might help you. How does this sound? How does that sound? So you're still letting them connect those dots.
I like that. I have a client historically that in the essence of client-centered. So I've never asked a question, never tell him what to do. He's worked with me for a number of months. We're getting on. The relationship is growing. The trust is the foundation. The authenticity is the foundation, and he's finding those elements within himself. But one of the things that we have noticed, both him and I, which is, I guess, the integrity of the relationship, the connection that we have, is that we role play. So as a man finding his feet and being able to be comfortable in his role, in his power dynamic with family, friends, and his growth, language is his problem, because he hasn't had the opportunity to find simple terminology, just simple ways of explaining himself that essentially asserts a boundary without having to tell someone, this is my boundary. So we've been going back and forth about language, and I've sometimes had to sit with myself thinking, am I coaching him? Or are we playing out the content? Am I giving him just little subtleties in the way he frames how he wants to assert a boundary? Because we're talking about exactly the same thing, but I'm just doing it from a more articulate background. Is this helping? And it's clear that it's working, but we made a bit of a joke about it. I shouldn't really be doing this, but it sounds like you're trying to say that. And it feels like these words would be more in keeping with, your character and your genuineness. And I just get a lot of nods.
I'm thinking there that I think that's wonderful. And I just wonder how much of yourself you hold back at that point, when it's not about that, it's not about that. Yeah, like you say, the coaching, it's almost like we're afraid to give advice, or we're afraid to ask a question. And that's the part I'm letting go of, because I think that, there's a time and a place. And I think, if you've got that background, then you are totally aware of the impact of the direct questions. But, just to sort of go for another slant with another angle on that, I talk about fierce self-compassion from Dr. Kristen Neff, and it lands well with lots of clients. So I think what I do is psych education, really. It's coaching, but it's psych education. They don't get printouts. They don't have to come back and tell me what they've done the next week.
There's no homework.
So I would say what the difference might be if I had that client and whatever, or is that the talking about fierce self-compassion and the resource, that inner resource of that kind of mama bear that helps to talk about all parts work, where you can really identify that part of you that's that protector part. Because Rogers also talks about all parts welcome. So these all link together, these theories. And so all parts welcome, to me, says that he was aware we had various parts. And we can work with the clients to kind of identify what they are. Is that coaching? Is that therapy? I think it's still therapy.
Yeah. No, I like it. And that makes a lot of sense. And, it's something very odd just happened to me then, just in the essence of being completely transparent. I just remembered back to 10 years ago, 12 years ago, college and university, doing this course. And I remember reading, and I don't know which Carl Rogers book it is, but there is an example of him in at home, and there are a bunch of kids at 1:00 in the morning, just doing damage to a car outside his home. They've got nothing else to do. And I think he talks about how most individuals might start screaming and shouting at the kids, these delinquents, and giving them a hard time, telling them to sod off. But what he does is goes out and in true Carl Rogers empathic way, asks them how they are. What are they doing? How do they feel? And it was it's a much longer segment to the book, but essentially that that acceptance of these young people that were bored, they didn't have good role models in their lives, all came out while, I think there's about 5-6 of these kids, and they all talked with Rogers for an hour. And I think the crux of that is it was either the next day or the following weekend. Leaves had been raked up in his garden or something like that.
Oh,
And
wow.
these kids had come round, just did some good things because they'd been accepted, heard, and valued. And I wonder, certainly with social media, where we are, the algorithms and how I guess the gender wars, how everyone is so judgmental. I think
Oh, yeah.
we could all learn a little bit of client-centered in how everyone is. If you're a misogynistic man, okay, he's a misogynistic man. He's still a good man. It's just his character. Okay, so
Yeah.
you're this lady and you do that. Just accept it, And I think if we had that opportunity to be more person-centered, I think it really would make a positive shift. Now, you would
I totally agree.
you do. Yeah. And I
Yeah,
think you're starting it at home, aren't you, with your family?
you start at home with your family. Yeah, you water your own grass or whatnot. I don't know. Yeah, yeah, and yourself. It's yourself, isn't it? It's that whole. I think it's that. Yeah, and I think as well. I've been trying. So when I first started to read about Rogers and everything, I just felt this insatiable need to share, which was a bit odd, and it still goes on. And I've grappled with that, like, okay, well, whatever. And again, the research that I did just continued to carry on. I would go into lessons. My peers will tell you, and I'll be writing notes every time I was learning new things. I'd be like, people need to hear this. People need to hear this.
I've got a
And
responsibility. I can't unknow this now.
yeah, and it sounds like a shameless plug, and I promise you it's not, but that's where and why I started to write my book, was to get all that out. Because the same as you, I just feel that it is a way of being. And when you look at the last bit of looking down here, because my book's here, the last part of his way of being and his hopes for the human race, he lists what he would see as some of the qualities of a person that would be fully functioning. And I've looked at them and I've kind of broken them down into what that actually looks like. So yeah, I think it's really interesting how he kind of leaves us with that set of instructions, which actually, come on, I mean, that's not person-centered, but it is.
Yeah, and do you know what?
It is.
You just reminded me of something. Jordan Peterson. We went to go and see Lottie and me went to see him back in October at in London at the
Wow.
O2, and the event is called the Arc, and I didn't know anything about it. I just thought, Jordan Peterson, I'm sold. Let's go and have a listen to what he's got to say. I did come out of the event with a bit of a headache because
Yeah.
his academic speech is a lot to unpick. But essentially, to you, what you just said a few moments ago, which is what reminded me about watering your own garden. That's exactly what Jordan Peterson's saying. So the ARC, which is the Association of Responsible Citizenship, effectively, we've got to look after ourselves, whether it's in his terms and words, go and tidy your room, make
Yeah.
sure that your family's okay. You have a responsibility to be the best person that you can be, period. And everything else will fall into place if you do so. And I think that message is, again, very Rogers in my view.
It's completely Rogers. I have developed, don't know where this will go, but I called it the self-led life.
Okay.
And that is exactly what it is. And it's about, leading yourself. And I start with talking about looking at who you are today. And I'm quite open with some of the concepts. So conditions of worth, frames of reference, cultural, considerations. So looking at exactly who you are and what has made you into that person, so that then you can start to be, you can access the actualizing tendency.
Lovely.
So
Lovely.
is that directive? Is it not? Is it coaching? Is it not? But you're helping someone to take them layers off, so they can feel that and they can get to that. So the self-led life, I think, is about, for me, exactly that. I should contact Jordan Peterson. No, it's exactly
We'll do it together,
that.
don't worry.
It's about taking responsibility, understanding where your self-worth is going to stop you in your tracks, having emotional intelligence. So how is this person receiving me when I'm talking to them? Am I seeing them? I encourage to use sort of therapy toolbox tool tips or whatever. So really, clocking your own thoughts whilst you're in conversations, knowing what your triggers are and not being embarrassed to look into them. We all have reactions when we're talking to people, but it's that what's going on. So yeah, sorry, lit me up then, because that's what the book turned into, was this whole, a self-led life and what that means. And I have basically broken down what Roger's said and made it into a way of living.
And I guess time has changed, isn't it? Rogers back in the 50s, we've got people like Jordan Peterson amongst many others that are trying to help. It sounds a bit cliche, but they are trying to help everyone. I think he's got a bit of a global effort to try and improve people's lives. Now, your book, we had a chat a few weeks ago and haven't mentioned the colourful title because I don't know if you've chosen the... So you've talked a bit about your book. Give me a little bit of insight into your book.
Oh, that's it, basically. It's about, it was a passion project that just flowed through I finished research. It just kept going. I was making notes along the way from university of all my, you say about light bulb moments, all of those. And I piled it together because what I started to notice, especially from not being from an academic background or, just having access to lots of different people, that I would talk about conditions or whatever, and people wouldn't perhaps recognize that they were a real thing and what conditions were. So it's not an easy read. My friend Charlotte has done great beta reading, and she's like, wow, and it's not something, you're not going to be reading that before bed. It comes with a real big book companion, and it's for anybody that wants to learn more about the conditions and the impact of our first early years in life, our first 1,001 days, they call it, don't they? Like, the attachment and how that feeds into who we are today. Because I guess I say, a bit like a sat nav, you need to know who you are, where you are, in order to decide where you're going to get going. And that's where the coaching comes in, because we sometimes will try and set goals, but they're based on the person that we think we are, that's been shaped perhaps by more people than us, our parents, our caregivers. So it's unpicking.
Yeah, you are so right. Yeah.
Yeah. And it has got a colourful title because I want to appeal to everybody, young people, old people. Sweary titles seem to be the thing, people, exactly, people.
Yeah.
So the self-led life is like a set. Yeah.
Yeah, you've said something that really resonates with me. The whole, we need to find our market. No, everyone needs to be treated with respect. Everyone needs to treat themselves with respect. It doesn't matter. We can't encourage ill-equipped, poor self-image and self-worth and external validation. We can't support that, which is going on at a global level. And you mentioned 100%. Schools earlier, which I think is probably another subject that we should bring up in another episode. But I think essentially, if we can just keep respecting and being empathic to other people's beliefs, it's the whole curious paradox, isn't it? There's that people do actually change. And it's just a different way of thinking. And I guess your book is celebrating everything that you've learned over the course of years, your own journey. And then I can hear your excitement. This is like, why don't people know about this? How
Yes.
because self-awareness, and when I hear people saying, oh, you got to love yourself, and then I my interpretation of how that might come across is quite narcissistic, instead of self-worth and self-love and empathy for others and yourself is a long old journey, and you can't just relish in immediate gratification and external validation. And for me, the reason why I
Oh,
stay in
no.
this role and this job is because I have the opportunity to meet individuals on a weekly basis, and I have an impact. Like you, I'm
Oh,
not academic, so writing a book is going to be a bit of a challenge. So I'm fast tracking to podcasts. So working with people like yourself as well,
love
I
that.
see this as just an absolute blessing. If I'm honest, if I'm straight with you.
Oh, yeah, and I can feel your passion, and I think, yeah, it's that, isn't it? And I think, so if I was restricted by my conditions, like, I wouldn't even have tried to do any of this, because, and I think it's that for me, it's that kind of, when I learnt in a person-centered setting that there were things that had led to my self-concept, thinking behind the thinking. If I knew earlier on that actually it just all made sense, that some of the things that I had been told that I was just didn't feel who I was, and that led to that cracking point, really. But
Yeah.
I think, yeah, so I think it's really important that, because for me, I felt free. I thought, oh, right, there's a reason for me feeling so rubbish.
Yeah. And it can be, and if we don't have a spark of inspiration, or we don't fall apart, we stay the same. And that is absolutely terrifying when I think of close friends, family, other clients that I've met, that
Okay.
the opportunity to stay as they were is frightening. And it goes for me
Yeah.
as well. I remember what I was like when I was a young man. So that's the reason why I'm doing this. And it sounds like you've got some similar aspirations to. There's so much growth in this journey, and how could you not share it? Go on, what were you thinking?
No, I just, because the beauty of it is, Elliot, we can change our life in a second, because
Yeah.
we're only as good as the last bad thought we had about ourselves.
Oh,
We are only
that's
as
a good
bad,
one.
because that's it. That's
I'm
it.
writing that one down.
And the
That's mine now.
second, yeah, that's it. And that, whatever you like, I say to clients, think back to that last thought. That's where you are. That's your benchmark. And
Yeah.
also, people, I was just going to say, sorry, people that have goals and aspirations, this is definitely another episode we need to be looking at. And I've got loads that I'd love to share with you about therapeutic goals, and how we can do
Okay.
that in a non-directive way, aligned with our values. It's very person-centered, looking at what extrinsic goals are, making sure that we can get access the goals that are actually from our heart. And that is, again, that education, that psych education, does give people the permission and a little bit of structure, but to start looking at their own values and what truly lights them up. But like you said, how do you find those hunches? How do you find those things if everything's just packed on top of you and you don't have access to yourself?
And it's the organismic self, and this will make you chuckle. When I was at college, I called it my orgasmic self in
Oh,
a presentation. True dyslexic, the Freudian slip. Don't say it. Don't say it. Don't say it. Oh shit.
I said it. Yeah. What is it? Yeah, orgasmic valuing process or whatever. Yeah. Sounds exciting if you're an expert in
That's
that.
a completely different episode. Let's not go down that road. Listen, I was just thinking about uh, drawing to a close, and there's kind of two things that I was going to ask you. Us as therapists, we're only human at the end of the day, and we might have our ways of looking after our own mental health, and the POC is about inspiring people to talk. And even if
Mm,
it's a case of the more therapists, entrepreneurs, and clients that we reach out to and record these sessions, we hopefully, and this is a fingers crossed, this is kind of
Yeah.
the goal, is to be a bit of a conduit to connect people to the right people. So just remind me your location. I know you do it online, but where are you based again?
I'm based in Staffordshire.
I'm so excited and hope that you'd like to do a few more of these, because I think we've got some
Love
common
to.
ground to discuss. But
Yeah.
when we think about, the inspiring people to talk and feeling brave, and maybe they're looking at therapy for the first time, or they're wondering what it's all about, what advice would you give to somebody that's thinking about going down that therapeutic process from a client's perspective?
I would say, you don't have anything to lose and a lot to gain. I think it's quite nice to have a space that's just about you, all about you, and have somebody sit alongside you, and you can just unapologetically explore what is going on for you. It doesn't, and at any time you can pull the cord if it's not for you. I don't see how you could come out I come out of a session feeling, worse off, if that makes sense. But even if you go in with the attitude, if you're a bit cautious of therapy, like I would say to my clients, you got the image in your head of a typical therapist, then, bring to the session, start with your expectations, what's going to work for you. And, and what it's a two-sided process, basically. It's not, it's
It so
about, and
is.
it's about you.
Yeah.
Hmm.
What do you do for your mental health? How do you look after you? As you're human like me, what do you do to keep you in check?
It's really ongoing and it changes. It
Hmm.
changes. So I regularly update what I view as self-care. So today I'm starting to do the couch to 5K because I want to try and strengthen my mindset.
Yeah,
But I
I know a
will
few people that are
unapologetic.
doing that.
Yeah. I love having a bit of a nap in the day,
You forgiven?
a reset.
So do I.
Um, and you know what? We've just, whether this is self care or whatever, but I self care is actually being a little bit just leaning. Like I say, we're really at the moment looking at how to build our connection as a family, because things are starting to get a bit busier. So we're just looking at ways we can continue to utilize the weekends and things like that. But I love dog
Oh, nice.
walking. I love being outdoors. All the cliches. My dog is the most person-centered thing that ever walked the planet. My spaniel,
There
and
is pet
yeah,
therapy,
I
isn't
think
there?
I would.
Where
Yeah,
therapists take dogs into residential care homes, and there is
yeah,
scientific evidence to prove that it increases capabilities of Alzheimer patients and things just by stroking a dog. It actually releases the endorphins that we need to feel
beautiful.
alive and grow.
It's really, that is that, and it so works. But I think, you know what, another bit of self care as well is just keeping a check of your, as I would call it, your growth circle, and just making sure
Meaning
that
the
you're
people
checking
around
in with
you.
yourself.
So
Mm,
you gravitate towards people that are either they have their own expectations and values, and they kind of help you lift your glass ceiling almost.
yeah, but also that I help them to do that for themselves as well. So
Ah,
small selection of people that are harvested and and there's a real common commonality between us, that's it. It's about that two-sided. So I'm continually looking how to cultivate that and
yeah.
change it, because we're not always, I don't, it's okay to have friendships that are outdated, but that growth circle for me is really important.
Final question. I was talking about, paradox of change, inspiring people to talk. Out of the people that you value, trust, and respect, who would you call at 3 a.m. if you needed to, and why?
Oh, that's a really good question. Well, I wouldn't be ringing far because it would definitely be my husband. So,
Oh,
but yeah, yeah, he's my best friend, and he without even having any training in what we person centered, he really, I think him, him seeing me has allowed me to see myself. And so he's my ride or die. And I have some very close friends as well, one of which is Jill, my best friend Jill. And, she would also be, again, it's about those relationships that are mutual. It's that mutual thing we've got going on. Yeah.
Important people around you. And it's just lovely to hear, you've trained in a different location. We got our qualifications at different times, but the essence of client-centered doesn't seem to have got lost, which I think is important.
Never. No, definitely not. It underpins everything I do, and I think it definitely does, and it's brilliant to meet another person. It's just sometimes so hard when we give ourselves a hard time for asking questions and things, but because I can tell just from talking to you, you've got that integrity. So keep in touch, because I love what you do, and I think it's going to be amazing.
So if Geri's story resonated with you, perhaps you're looking into therapy or wanting to become a therapist, please click on the links in the description below. I'm sure Geri would love to hear from you. Until next time, let's just keep the conversations going, shall we?